Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
sweet. Jesus.
So yeah, it's the fun that we get to have here at Franchise Nutrition and Fitness. Um, but I wanted to bring up this thing because if you go back to listen to our alcohol, nutrition, and fitness podcast, it's one of the most listened to episodes that we have, although it's not the most, which is fun. Um, we talk about alcohol, and you can still have it for your nutrition and fitness because it's not going to limit you greatly and prohibitively unless you overdo it with alcohol, right? But a recent study came out and utilized compared beer following a run to water. So you saw this, right, Matt? You saw the study.
I did, yeah. Of course, like I was geared towards it. Go figure. As soon as I saw that, I was like, let me read further into this.
Yeah. But they compared 300 milliliters of beer to 300 milliliters of water. And for people out there listening that aren't familiar with the metric
Yeah,
system,
if you're in America, you refuse to learn it. Like it's fine. Like that's
yeah, that is only 10 ounces of beer. So it's not even a can of beer, you know?
no.
So,
Like I was having this conversation the other day. Like I love the little 8 ounce cans you can buy. Like because it's I feel like Andre the Giant #1. Like it's funny, but then like oh, I can literally like down it in one fell swoop because it's easy for me. Like we've talked about before, I drink cruddy light beer, so it's easy enough to chug like a 12 or a 16 or a 20 or whatever. So, but like an 8 ounce like Miller Light, yeah, you can like just kill one of those off really quick and not even think about it. So maybe that study was geared towards people like that. So,
yeah.
but even still, that's an 8 ounce one. That's a cup. That's not a 10 ounce. That's
Yeah. And so I don't know. I don't know of any beer that comes in a 10-ounce variety.
yeah, because like I'm trying to think because like you go to the bar, they pour you a pint. If you ever want to have a really fun time, like get a 16 ounce can of beer, pour it into a pint glass. It doesn't fit. But I'm trying to think like when I was in Japan, it was smaller portions. Even then, I think it was a 12 ounce cup. Like it wasn't a 10 ounce, it wasn't
Yeah.
an 8 ounce. So yeah, that's intriguing.
Like a lot of Belgian bottled, like smaller bottled things for like 14 ounces instead of 16 ounces, or they'll be like 11.8 instead of
Okay,
12.
you say that I had something one time. I can't got into my head. I couldn't tell you what it was, but I did have a beer one time. It was in a 10.2 ounce bottle. So maybe that
Right. Yeah. So if it's that one,
that
like
one particular beer that I can't
that,
remember what it was.
I was gonna say that the only beer that exists in the market that you could get is a 10-ounce thing. So either way, I'm gonna have the beer anyways. It doesn't really matter. So I'll have it if it's a pint. I went to our usual run club yesterday, and I had 2 pints. So woo,
So
big deal.
if 10 ounces is good, like 32 ounces has to be like perfect, then a gallon, like you're superhuman, right?
uh, that's kind of the part of it. There's definitely a bell curve in there where it's going to start negatively affecting you and not actually helping you, or um,
La
ruining.
la 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 la. I can't hear you.
uh, but that kind of leads into the topic I wanted to talk about today is training age versus biological age.
So
So
drinking age versus no.
right, right. So
The age of my liver versus yeah, my chronological age. Yeah.
right, yeah. So that your tolerance for things versus your intolerance for things, right? So when we're thinking about uh, training age and biological age, I feel like biological age is the easy one for people to grasp. That's how old you are, right? Um, Training age, though, varies greatly.
And it's so nuanced, and I know we'll get into it in a second. I feel like with training age, people see themselves as fit or as being a gym goer, and just can say my training age. Hey, I've been going to the gym for 15 years. My training age is 15. It's not as simple as that, depending on the activity, which we'll delve into.
Right. I would say, let's say you're training for quote unquote training. You've been exercising for 15 years. If you have not been like pushing it to the limit, like you haven't really been trying to get close to failure and all those things for 15 years of that total time, your training age is actually probably less than 15, you know? Um, if you've been a competitive power lifter and you've been, gracing the stages in the top 10 competitors in the world for 15 years, your training age might be close to like 30
Right.
years.
Whereas, like on the opposite end of the spectrum, like the specificity principle comes into play as well. Like, if you've been that bodybuilder and you've been competing and you've been killing it for 15 years in the gym, great. Like your strength training age is 15 to 30, like you said, but you haven't been doing a whole lot of plyometric training, so it doesn't cross over to that. You're like, oh, well, it just crosses over in that as well. Like, oh, my training age is just everything. That's not the case. Like, training age for flexibility training is probably not the same as your strength training. I know for me personally, that's definitely the case.
Right. I was laughing about it with somebody yesterday because he asked about like my background in fitness and things. And um, I said, what is odd that a lot of people didn't realize, I don't think, is that I wasn't lifting to be strong necessarily. Like strength comes along with it because you're doing the activities, but I was lifting to look like I was really strong.
Yeah, no, I think you've probably used the same quote I like to use. That like, I don't want to lift heavy. I want to look like I lift heavy. Like I don't care if I can bench press 400 pounds. I want to look like I can bench press 400 pounds. It's
Right.
it's as aesthetically pleasing muscle. Show muscle, not go muscle.
Right. And even in that, um, when you're looking at training age and biological age, if you are, let's say, on the older side of biological age, you can still probably produce enough stimulus to look like you are a bodybuilder. Uh, the nuance is what you choose to do. So you may not be able to lift heavy even though your training age is low because your biological age is higher and you have a history of chronic issues that hinders your ability to get heavy, like joint and muscle tears or other kind of things that you've developed over the years. Um, and that's kind of where we come in the most is for people that have some amount of background history where they were training or exercising and they have a history there and they kind of know their way around the gym a little bit, but you're trying to go for something new or you're trying to get back to where you were before. And the approach that you had in the beginning is likely not to apply in the same manner for your new goal or your new aspiration that you have now because your biological age has increased. So the best example I think I have for it is when I was uh, like 15 or 16, I benched 135 for the first time, somewhere in there. I'm now 37. It is no longer difficult for me to bench 135. However, if I want to work on getting my bench press up to 300, I cannot utilize the bench press itself as much as I did when I was 16. So,
Oh, the joys of aging.
yeah, yeah. And also the miles and work that I've done training previously to this. So I've put a lot of work in that's developed these chronic problems that I currently have, which aren't,
Yeah, like sometimes there's injuries that occur that joints
yeah,
don't function the way they did when you were 16.
yeah, that's really rare. I saw your post,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, I was yeah, like because I like doing a deep dive into research. I go back and listen to the episode as far as the correct methods of research. But yeah, I was researching triceps tendon ruptures. Yeah, apparently of all upper limb tendon injuries, that's accounts for less than 1%. So I feel very special.
What was the highest?
I didn't even look. I was just like, they didn't like, there's a hyperlink that I'm sure would go through it, but like
Okay.
I was very, the again, specificity was what I cared about. I was basically going through trying to like see if I could argue with the doctor.
Yeah. Good luck
with
on that.
yeah, without how they've got, because like my doctor's treating this very conservatively, and I've talked to like the OT that fit me for the brace and stuff. He's like, yeah, some doctors aren't this conservative with it. I was like, I want to go talk to one of those other doctors.
Yeah. I would assume, I could be wrong, obviously, that if you're looking for upper extremity tendon problems, it's either going to be something related to, as like the most common thing, is either going to be something that's like shoulder or maybe a wrist for carpal tunnel or something.
Shoulder or biceps maybe is what I was thinking, just because
Oh, for the
anecdotally,
tendon.
yeah, I've known so many people that have had biceps tendon tears.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that have like shoulder, frozen shoulder, rotator cuff kind of things, and
Yeah,
that ends up being a tendon technically that's back here that's
right.
not necessarily being utilized appropriately. Either way, let's say that's you. You can still come to us and we can develop the fitness program that's going to help you get back to being regular and using all those things. That's kind of what Matt's talking about. He just wants to argue with the doctor so that way he can get back to doing more stuff with his arm, even though it's still a relatively fresh
Absolutely. And it's a
repair.
long road ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. You should invest in a hyperbaric chamber. Maybe
I
you could
should
cut
totally. Yeah.
it.
Totally have the money for that. So yeah, that's why we're telling you to go ahead and go on over to franchiseinf.com. Just we need all the clients. Like, I'm gonna start a GoFundMe on top of that so I can
Oh
aid in
yeah.
my recovery.
Damn, that would be nuts. I do know that since you're in the greater Atlanta area, you could find a place to let you go use their hyperbaric chamber for X number of hours in a day. So you wouldn't have to buy the whole chamber. You just
There
have
you go.
to
Just to have that
go
investment.
get used. Yeah. Maybe you maybe a sports ortho will be able to get you a referral. You could
There you
write it off into insurance, but I need this for my recovery. You could be an own study candidate. You could be, this is a really rare thing. Only less than 1% of the
Yeah, and
population has this injury.
then we can chronicle it like in this podcast. We create a whole separate podcast for this. Yeah, it would be an interesting. Yeah, like
Yeah. So, and that would help out with your training age. Does your training age accelerate or decelerate with a hyperbaric chamber?
there you go.
Is it possible to reverse some of the signs of aging that you have as far as training? Can you work with different programs and different utilities like a hyperbaric chamber
Hey,
to,
the training age of this particular elbow though is better than the training age of every other joint I have because the doctor said there were no signs of arthritis, unlike every other joint I have. So I was very impressed, very
that
surprised.
is that is surprising based off of wrestling. The frequent compaction of joints and the use of them with all of the wrestling that you've done. It's impressive that your
Right. Okay.
elbows.
That's just that one because I know the other one. I was, yeah, I think we've talked about this before in the podcast. Yeah, I was making the joke, yeah, a couple months ago that it was it's the last good joint I had, and of course
Yeah. Well, it's because it's your right arm.
yeah.
Right?
So we always worked the left.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. Yeah. It's actually just a trick. Matt's right arm isn't hurt. It's his left arm that's hurt. He just puts these posts out with his right arm so that way people think.
It's an optical illusion. Yeah, I just use the selfie camera all the time. It flips around, so it just looks like my right arm. Yeah,
But either way, like we've referred to before, if you are trying to do something new and it doesn't seem like you're able to get back to the same place that you've been at before, head on over to franchiseinf.com, sign up for your free meet and greet, get started today. We can hook you up with the program that's best for you to help you reach your goals.
Yeah, before we sign off, like real quick, like you mentioned chronological age 37 for you. Like what do you consider your training age?
Um, that's a good
Yeah,
question.
because I was thinking about this before we got on. I was like, all right, what is my training
Yeah, if I was thinking about my training age, the first time I lifted weights at all, I was 15 for sport. I was 15 years old. Um, and but I would not say that my training age is 22 because I had all the time
I,
off.
I'm the same way, yeah, because like I started lifting when I was 15, but differently from you, I don't like, I've had very little time off. Like I posted recently, like the 12 days after the surgery was the longest in my adult life from 18 on that I've gone without like going to the gym. So it's very weird, but I don't feel like there was enough of a structured program. There was like this self-structured program at 15, figuring out what I was doing, picking up the mainstream magazines and stuff. So I think like I really like maybe by the time I was like 19, 20, like I really consider myself training from then on. So 16, 17 years.
Yeah, if I broke it down, I'd be closer to 0 with the ability to accelerate quickly to 5. So if, if um, and that's just for example because I know how to work myself back to being very close to where I was before in a safe way. And that's just from years of experience of the other training principles to try and make sure that I can get strong enough to do the work that I want to do. For example, when last year I was going to the 880, which was annoying. Um, when I was able to train for that, I went from squatting 135 to 315 in less than 2 months. But that's because I spent 3 weeks just doing 135.
And that
So,
goes into muscle memory and all kinds of fun stuff that we can talk about on a later podcast. So,
right.
so
So,
I feel like we just need to get like franchise nutrition and fitness like 880 club shirts made just to
oh,
like
I'd be so pissed. I'd be so angry. There's no way.
you can find those eventually on franchisenf.com.
Right. Yeah. 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 The sadness club would be a picture of me
The
frowning.
sadness 880 club. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly what we need.
Either way, like we say every week, maximize every bite.
Maximize every rep.